Everyone, and welcome to On Purpose Astrology. Today, I'd like to talk about the weather. Us Brits, are famous for talking about the weather, but here in the UK, we're having very average temperatures and very average weather for the time of year, which is not the case in many other places in Europe, particularly Southern Europe, and also other places around the world. Certainly, even here in the UK, the weather and the consequences of the current weather is big news. This is a screenshot from the BBC website that I took just before I started recording this. We can see that temperatures are expected to peak at 46 degrees centigrade as the Europe heatwave continues. Meanwhile, it says in the US at midnight last night in Death Valley, California, it was still 49 degrees centigrade, which is just over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Similar temperatures and even higher temperatures in other parts of the world, of course. If you just have one quick look at the news, you'll see constant updates on what's happening in the weather across the world. Now, it's always interesting to have a look at the astrology when we have these big events. And I'm going to show you the chart or the new moon, yesterday's new moon on the 17th of July. I've set this new moon chart for Cagliari in Italy. It's the capital of Sardinia, the Italian island. The reason I've set it for Cagliari is because Sardinia is one of the places that's expected to hit 46 degrees today. We can see the new moon there on the right-hand side of the chart. And there we can see Pluto circled on the left-hand side of the chart. The new moon there, obviously the sun and the moon together, is in the seventh house and it's angular. It's on the descendant angle. And anything that's angular is going to be emphasized. It's going to be bigger. It's going to have more of an impact. So we could see that this is an impactful new moon. We can also see here that Pluto is angular. It's a little bit wide, but it's angular. It's in the ascendant, which is the beginning of the chart. The new moon is therefore opposite Pluto. It's a new moon Pluto opposition. Obviously, since yesterday, the moon has moved on. But because the sun moves 1 degree a day, so it's now around 25 degrees, it's going to be opposite Pluto for a few more days, for about another 4 or 5 days at least in orb. So we've got more of that heat to come. So it's interesting that it's Pluto opposite this new moon because Pluto, as we know, is equivalent of Hades, which is the god of the underworld, the god of hell. Now, this is the second consecutive heat wave in Europe. The first one was called Cerberus, aptly named after the three-headed hound of hell who guarded the gates of hell. They've now called this current heat wave that's happening right now Charon, named after the Greek myth of the ferryman who takes souls to the underworld. More record-breaking temperatures are predicted, as I've said. And of course, the consequences are, for individuals, can be difficult, can be actually, there probably will be some loss of life, loss of property as well, because drought and wildfires are also a consequence of this very hot weather. As I said, similar heat waves in some American states. I've already mentioned Death Valley in California and in Asia as well, with China, for example, reporting a record-breaking temperature. Now, what's really interesting is that the North Node has very recently gone into Aries. You can see that highlighted. I put a red ring around it at the bottom of the chart in house 3. The North Node in Aries. It's actually an axis. So you'll see if you follow a line directly up, you'll see that the South Node is in Libra. But the North Node is about what's coming in, about what needs to find expression. And Aries traditionally is a hot, dry sign. Aries is a fire sign. And my friend Marcus Patchett, actually, who's a traditional astrologer, has said that he sees the North Node as what we see more of. So we see more heat, for example. And I'm not saying that every time that the North Node goes into Aries, we're going to have similar problems, or we've had similar problems in the past, but it's certainly an interesting significator. We've already talked about the Pluto opposite that new moon, which is talking about sort of hellish conditions for many people. People can't go outside, for example. Now, what I think is really interesting is that you will often see other things that reflect what's happening in the current world. What I mean by that, the example I'm going to give you is television programs. Now, bear in mind that television programs are made months, sometimes years in advance, and they're scheduled weeks, maybe months in advance. Last night, the BBC debuted a new series called Earth. Earth explores the history of our planet. And the first episode was called Inferno. So we're back in that sort of heat and fire again. And what it related was a prehistoric global warming disaster, which wiped out 90% of life on Earth. It's being dubbed by scientists, the Great Dying. Painfully relevant today, I guess, because of global warming. Of course, we're not going to see an event like that here and now. Back then, as I say, it was a prehistoric time, even before millions of years, even before the dinosaurs. And it was when there was one continent called Pangaea before the continents broke up on Earth. That's how long ago it was. Volcanic eruptions on a massive scale, and the ramifications of those eruptions meant that the temperature went up, and as I said, 90% of life on Earth and in the oceans died. It was a mass extinction event, and of course, many people fear that we're going through another mass extinction event on the planet now. At the same time, interestingly, the day before, which was on Sunday night, which was the 16th of July, the BBC also debuted the second series of a program called World on Fire. So again, you've got that kind of fiery theme running through the TV shows that are going on at the moment. It's about World War II. It's about the human impact on World War II. And much of the action in this second series is focused on the unrelenting heat in the Egyptian desert, where part of the war, World War II, was played out. So I think that's really interesting. Now, it's not just about hot, dry weather, of course. We've also had floods. So, for example, we've seen recently tragedy at sea with the Titan submersible implosion, which got a lot of news, but also the much larger and much less reported loss of life of more than 600 migrants when their migrant boat capsized off the coast of Greece. We see here on the chart, I've used the same chart actually, 17th of July 2023 for the new moon. And I haven't changed the location. So we can kind of dismiss the houses, but it doesn't matter. We can see here in the chart Saturn in the second house in Pisces. Now, a lot of astrologers have predicted and talked about what it will mean for our planet's water, because Pisces is the water sign, is a water sign, and Saturn manifests things that we need to do, we need to learn, we need to solve. It brings us tests, lessons, and obstacles, and karma, of course. It's interesting, we just talked about the geological ages, geological eras that this program called Earth is going to be exploring throughout the series. We're now in what's called the Anthropocene era, and it is the first era that has been predominantly affected by humanity and humanity's actions. The Industrial Revolution, for example, and fossil fuels burning, for example. But here in this chart, as I said, we are going to see, we have already seen, but are going to see lots of issues around water. And a lot of astrologers have also pointed out the connection with Sedna. Now, Sedna is a fairly new kind of dwarf planet, and well, not new, but relatively newly discovered. I mean, we've known about Saturn for many, many centuries, relatively newly discovered dwarf planet. And it was named Sedna after the goddess that protects marine life, the mother of the sea, if you will. And this year Sedna has been making a series of squares to Saturn. We see here that Sedna has very recently moved into Gemini, and Saturn is moving back through Pisces. It won't quite make another exact square, but it will still be going in the orb of a square. So what does that mean? Well, Sedna and marine life, of course, things to do specifically with the sea, the tragedies I've just talked about. But also in this program, Earth, they did talk. Chris Packham was the guy who presented it, very well-known naturalist, certainly in this country, very well respected. Also, he's a climate change activist as well. He talked about some of the current issues that we had. He went out on a boat. It was a beautiful day. And he saw a pod of dolphins, lots of different actual species of dolphins, and they were fishing, and, you know, an absolutely beautiful, wonderful thing to see. I hope one day I will go and spend time with dolphins. Like, I think we'd all love to. And he said, of course, we're having rising temperatures of the sea temperatures. Now, the good news is that dolphins can tolerate higher temperatures. So can other marine creatures. But the problem is that under these higher temperatures, toxic algae is thriving as well. And the algae is eaten by the small fish. The small fish are eaten by the medium fish, and the medium fish are eaten by the dolphins, and it's poisonous to dolphins, and dolphins are literally dying. So if you think of Sedna as, I guess, the equivalent of Mother Earth, though Gaia, Mother Earth is the whole Earth, it's the land and the sea. But if you think of Sedna a little bit like the goddess who's looking after marine animals, marine life, flora and fauna, then she's not happy. We also are seeing at the moment, while we're having these hot temperatures all over the place, and we're also having fires and droughts, we're seeing flooding. Typhoon Talim has, over the last couple of days, been spreading across parts of Asia. We're seeing deadly floods in South Korea. The typhoon is now, thankfully, calming down, but it's just been through China and Vietnam, making landfall in coastal areas and causing some destruction, some flooding, and evacuation of the local people. So, not the most cheery little video here, but I do think it's really interesting to look at the astrology whenever big things happening. And this is a big thing. I don't think I've ever known there to be so many concurrent weather crises and extreme weather conditions going on concurrently. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. Enjoy probably isn't the best word, but I hope you found it interesting and useful. I would love it if you would subscribe to On Purpose Astrology and watch this video, explore the other videos on my channel, and join me again. I'm currently working on a Pluto and Aquarius series. I've got 2 videos up already in my Pluto, no, 3, I think. Yeah, 3 or 4. Anyway, that's growing. The Pluto in Aquarius series of videos is growing, which talks all about what Pluto in Aquarius is all about, a little bit about Pluto in Capricorn because we're not quite finished with it yet. You can see Pluto's in Capricorn in this chart here still. It's gone back into Capricorn. And we'll also be looking at all the Pluto generations. So whether you were born with Pluto in Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, there will be a video for you exploring what Pluto in Aquarius will mean for your Pluto generation. Thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. Let's help me grow my channel. I'm really enjoying creating these videos for you. Take lots of care during these difficult times. Thank you. Bye-bye.